Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Curtis, and today I'm going to review Season 4, Episode 4 of BMF. The episode begins with Loco, Meech, and Terry inside of a store in Mexico. It appears that Loco is cool with the owners of the store because they allow Meech and Terry to get bottles of water for free. Loco looks out the window and notices that there are police officers outside. He tells Terry and Meech to get down. The police officers eventually come into the store and they are immediately attacked by Loco, and they are eventually tied up, which to me was very unrealistic. But the entire Mexico flashback sequence has been unrealistic to me from the beginning, so I guess it is what it is. And it's at this time that Loco, even though he's on the run and he's already, he's wanted, he decides to shoot at the officer's feet. And I kind of felt the way about the scene because I felt like they were referencing something else that happened. I think you all know what I'm talking about, but maybe I'm just tripping. Loco eventually, he gets tired of doing that and he hands the gun over to Meech, who follows suit and begins to shoot at their feet. And then Terry, who appears to be the smartest person in the room at this time, tells them that they need to stop messing around and that they need to leave before more police officers show up. And I agree. The scene then flashes forward to current time in Atlanta, Georgia, where we see Purdy inside the studio with Meech and Duffy. Purdy is impressed with the beat that Duffy made. Duffy tells her that she could come into the studio for free whenever she wants. And it's at this time that Meech reveals to her that he's starting a record label and that he wants her to be on his label. She tells him that that wouldn't really work because she's actually under contract with Trail. And she also tells him that she feels like Trail is holding her back at this time for reaching her full potential because she wants to rap, but Trail is forcing her to sing R&B. And she also tells him that she really wants to go to the Source Awards, but Trail told her that she cannot go even though he is going. And Meech tells her that he will do what he can to get her into the rap game. And she says that basically she will believe it when she sees it, and he says that she will see it. Next, we see Lucille, who's talking to Estelle, who is wearing the fur coat that Meech bought his mom in the previous episode, about what's going on at the church and how she is feeling overwhelmed because she is being tasked, with teaching people how to overcome financial hardship, even though she is currently experiencing it herself. And she also tells Estelle at this time, that her daughter had to get a job at Terry's restaurant because the scholarship does not actually cover room and board. It just covers, of course, the tuition as far as like the education. And she also tells Estelle that she does not really want to take money from Meech and Terry, which did not make sense to me because her daughter is working at Terry's restaurant, so wouldn't she in turn still get the money from... that part didn't really make sense to me, but it's a TV show, so I was just like, whatever. And it's at this time that Estelle tells her that she needs to apply for welfare. And Lucille tells her that she can't actually do that at this time because Charles still lives in the house. And Estelle tells her that she needs to lie and say that Charles no longer lives there. And Lucille, she's like, I can't do that. I'm a pastor. I'm a woman of God. I won't be able to do that. And it's at this time that Lucille notices that Estelle, she's getting very familiar with that fur coat. And she tells her that she plans to actually pawn it soon. And Estelle looks down at her hand and tells her that maybe instead of pawning this fur coat, you should consider pawning your wedding ring instead. Especially consider the fact that Charles has met somebody else. And I was like, hey, you gotta do something. After this, we see Mickey, who goes to meet with Terry. And it's at this time that Terry makes him take off his shirt, take off his pants to prove that he's not wearing a wire. And then Terry tells him that he wants him and Hoop to go spy on someone that he believes is being unloyal. We do not know who the person is, of course, at this time, but he does want them to spy on somebody. Next, we see Vaughn, who goes to the police station. And he shows the police officer with the high top fade a photo of Meech and Don Ginkgo at the car dealership. The officer says that he recognizes this person. Vaughn tells him that they need to figure out what Don's government name is so they could bring him into the station, question him, and basically hope that he will snitch on Meech in exchange for a lighter sentence. The officer tells Vaughn that he may be able to find him at the strip club because that's where people in Atlanta like to go to floss. Vaughn wants him to come with him, but he says he can't go because they will recognize him if he does. So he's basically on his own. After this, we see Meech, Loco, and one of Loco's homeboys walking through a warehouse in St. Louis. Loco inquires about Pusha because he wants to have a meeting with them. Meech tells him that he does plan to meet with Pusha later on, but he plans to do so alone. Loco and his partner, they insist he really wants to meet with Pusha. And Meech, he doesn't really want to do it, but eventually he agrees to do so. Next, we see Charles at the restaurant who is flirting with the waitress from the previous episode. She is super giddy and super happy, And then it's at this time that Charles says, you know what, I have to leave right now, but I will be back later on because I want to take you on a date around 7:30. And then his daughter Nicole, who remembers she's working there to pay for a room and board, tells the woman that she better not break her father's heart. And then she walks over to her table to try to help a customer. And it turns out that the customer is actually Worm, who used to be affiliated with Terry. And Worm says that Terry's not messing with him right now because he broke the dress code and not laughed the same way that Nicole did because Terry is super petty. It's at this time that Worm tells her that he plans to pick her up and drop her off after work so that way she can get home safe and also so he can get back into Terry's good graces. And at this time, I was a little confused and unsure, I'll be honest with you all. And maybe it's because I just watched too many movies or too many TV shows. Because I was just like, why would he want to pick her up at night and drop her off? And I was just like, okay, either he's planning to hold her hostage or he's trying to get some pussy from her as revenge to her brother. Like I said, I watch a lot of TV shows and movies, so my mind was just all out there. After this, we see Meech and Terry. They're in the car driving around St. Louis. And side note, I finally figured out what's wrong with Meech's voice. So Meech actually talks through his teeth. I'm not sure if his teeth are too big or if that's just something that he's been doing like his entire life, but I'm telling you, it drives me crazy. But back to the actual show. So the two of them, they're having a conversation. They're talking about Loco. They're talking about Pusha. They're also talking about Purdy. And Meech tells Terry that he believes that he can get Purdy to sign to the label if they can get her into the Source Awards and rebrand her as a rapper. Terry does not understand why Meech is going so hard as far as with Purdy and why he won't just go out and find another woman that can rap instead of trying to turn an established singer into a rapper. And Meech tells him that he's sticking with Purdy because he's already put a lot of effort into her and he feels like they are so close to signing her. After this, we see Markeisha. She goes to visit Boom in jail, and she tells him what happened or what she believes happened with Isaac in the last episode, as far as her believing that he was involved in some kind of sting. Boom gets upset because he believes that this may come back on him, and this could cause him to get more jail time. But Markeisha, she's able to calm the situation down, and she asks him if he has any other connects. He tells her that he will give her more information after this situation with Isaac dies down. Markeisha says that she loves him, gets up, and that smile that she had quickly goes away, and I was like, she has other plans. After this, we see Mickey and Hoop in the car near the jail, and it's at this time that Mickey and Hoop notice that Markeisha is coming out of the jail, and so it becomes clear that she is the person that Terry believes is being unloyal. And I was honestly confused because I thought that Terry already knew that she was working with Boom to get the connects, but maybe I'm wrong, maybe I just forgot. But it's at this time that Mickey reveals that Kato, the woman that he killed a couple of seasons ago, was actually carrying his baby, and I was just like, damn. And he looks down at his wallet where he sees a picture of his daughter, and he tells Hoop that he's grateful because he has a second chance of being a father. The conversation is starting to get a little heavy, so Hoop decides to redirect the conversation and tells him that they need to focus on Markeisha, and then they start to follow her. Next, we see two women with their titties out doing drugs. The scene then quickly flashes over to Trail, who is forcing the man head into a sink of water because the man, who turns out to be a radio personality, is not playing his artist's music as much as he said he would. He eventually allows the man to get up and leave, but he does tell the man that he wants to hear his artist on the radio every hour on the hour, or basically this will happen again. And it's at this time that Purdy walks into the room, and Trail tells her that he has been thinking about the idea of rebranding her, and he actually thinks that it is a good idea. And she thinks that he's talking about rapping, but it turns out that he actually wants to put her into a girl group. And the women that he wants to be in a group with her are the women who are doing the drugs in the room. And she tells him that that's not really something that she wants to do because she's already established, and the ladies will basically rise to the top based on her success. And I guess this pisses Trail off because he grabs her arm, pulls her towards the other ladies, and tells her that he made her, not the other way around. And I was watching this scene and I was just like, this scene kind of reminds me of something that I'm hearing about. And so I was thinking like, okay, this is a 50 Cent production. 50 Cent is not really the biggest fan of Diddy. So I'm just like, is this supposed to be like representative of Diddy and Cassie's situation? That's what it kind of feels like to me, but you never know. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. Meech and Terry go to meet Pusha and his people, and we see that Pusha has purchased a lot of things. Terry gets to the point and tells him that he cannot do things without letting him and Meech know. And side note, I do want to have a conversation about the accents and the lingo that Pusha and his people are using. Is this really how people from St. Louis talk, or is this a situation where 50 Cent basically listened to Nelly's album and decided that everybody from there talks like that? Because it's not landing to me, it's not connecting. It's coming off as being forced. Maybe it's a situation where the actors are not actually from St. Louis, and so it's coming off as forced. Either way it goes, I'm not really feeling it. But Pusha lets him know that he will not make any moves without letting him know. And it's also at this time that we end up meeting Push's brother Charles, who apparently sustained an injury to his hand. And after this, the men they go to the casino, and we see that Loco was there. So Meech did make good on his promise to get them to meet. And it's at this time that a group of men walk up on Charles, and it appears like it's getting ready to be an issue, it's getting ready to be a problem. Basically, it's getting ready to be a fight. But Terry's able to step in and tell him, like, hey, you need to calm down before you make the situation worse. And it appears that the men, they basically want to gamble against him. So Terry says, if you want to hurt them where it hurts most, which is their wallets. The scene then flashes to Charles, who is walking down the street with the waitress. The two of them are talking about their previous relationships, and the woman actually reveals that her most recent ex is extremely jealous because he thought that she was cheating on him, and also reveals that he stalks her from time to time. And I was like, what? Next thing you know, the guy actually pops up and he inquires about, what's going on. Charles tries to plead his case, but he's unable to because the guy punches him in the face. Charles steps back to look at him like, I know this motherfucker did not to put his hands on me. So then Charles punches him back, and he's able to get him on the ground, and he starts to beat him up, and it looks like he's got to beat him to death. And so the woman, she is shocked because, I don't think she knew that he was, I wouldn't say violent, but that he can handle himself that way. And so she begs him to stop, and it eventually does, and I was just like, damn. I was like, he better either get some pussy or he better get some head after doing all of that. Nicole finally gets off of work and Warren picks her up. The two of them start having a conversation about school, and he reveals that he's actually attending Wayne State University and that he's majoring in history. He tells her that the only reason why he's working for Terry so that he can pay for the tuition, and I was actually impressed. And it's at this time that Warren becomes vulnerable and tells Nicole that his father had a heart attack back in the day and that he died, and this kind of forced him to become the man of the house. And so his overall goal is to graduate from college so that he can make his father proud. Nicole smiled at him, and I was like, I feel like Nicole was feeling Worm a little bit. Back at the casino, we see Push's brother Charles playing a game against one of the men who approached him, and unfortunately ends up losing. And I do think it's very important to note that the person that he's playing against did some slick shit about his hand. And so Charles, who is clearly drunk, gets frustrated and attempts to fight the guy. Pusha comes over, holds him back, and tries to reason with him. And Charles, he is so frustrated, he says, fuck you, to his brother. But Terry comes over, grabs him and tells Pusha, don't worry about it, I'll drive him home. Once they get into the car, Charles decides to vent to Terry about his disdain for his brother. He tells him that Pusha is the one who actually has beef with the Moors, which I'm going to assume is another name for the Muslims. If it's not, I do apologize. And it's at this point that Charles tells Terry that the Muslims do not mess around, and I feel like that's going to come back a little bit later. But Terry tells him that he understands where he's coming from and reveals that his life is similar when it comes to Meech. He also tells him about the time that he got shot and the fact that the doctors actually messed up his eye during surgery, and he actually takes his glasses off and reveals his eye to him. And I thought that was kind of cool because that's a way for them to connect. And he tells him that people, they make fun of his eye the same way that people make fun of his hand. And side note, something tells me that these two are going to end up working together against Meech and Pusha. There are two quick scenes after this in which Mickey receives money from Lucille's church fund, and Vaughn tells the officer with the high top fade that he has a lead on Ginkgo and that he believes that he will be at the Palace Strip Club a little bit later that day. Speaking of Mickey, we see him back in the car with Hoop, and we see Markeisha coming out of the restaurant with another man, and Hoop reveals that this man is the cop. Markeisha ends up thanking the cop for giving her information about Isaac. The cop goes in for a kiss, but Markeisha moves away from him, and I was just like, damn, that was cold. After this, we see Purdy, who goes to visit Meech and Terry, and they tell her that they were able to get tickets to the Source Award. Purdy is so impressed that she tells him that she is going to sign with the record label, and I was honestly concerned at this point because I do not feel like Trail is going to take this news well. It's already apparent that Trail does not give a fuck about Meech, Terry, or BMF, so in my mind, I just feel like it may end in gunfire. Duffy tells him that, he wants to celebrate at the Palace, which is the strip club. But Meech tells him that they can't because they have to get ready to go to the Source Awards. And it appears that Duffy plans to go to the club on his own. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, Vaughn is going to be there. So I'm like, oh, he might get snatched up. There's a quick scene after this where we see Lucille in the closet looking at a receipt from the pawn shop. I could not read the writing on the receipt because it was written in cursive, so I'm not sure if she sold the fur or if she sold the wedding ring. Charles comes in and tells her that he's actually going back on the road soon. Lucille asks him when, and he says that it will be within the next 2 months. Charles notices that she appears to be super eager, so he inquires. And she tells him that basically she's trying to get him out as soon as possible so that she can apply for welfare. This pisses Charles off and he actually storms out of the room. In the next scene, Nicole and Worm, they fuck at the restaurant, and I was just like, I knew it. The scene then flashes to the strip club where Vaughn actually sees Duffy, but one of the strippers gets in the way and Duffy is able to get out. Mish, Terry, and Purdy, they go to the Source Awards, and they actually end up running into Trail, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Terry tells him that they will buy Purdy out of her contract, but Trail, it doesn't look like he's trying to hear it at that time. The groups had nearly get into a scuffle, but it looks like security actually comes in and stops it from happening. And then Trail surprisingly says, you know what, I'll allow you to sign Purdy. And then he starts to laugh, which confuses everybody. He tells him that you have no idea who Purdy is, and then he walks off. And Purdy is very scared because she knows that Trail's crazy. But Meech, because, he is the toughest man in the world, he doesn't fear anybody. He's like, it doesn't matter, it is what it is, and we'll handle him when we need to. The episode ends with Pusha talking to Loco and his homeboy about working together without Meech. And it actually looks like they're actually willing to talk to him and make a deal without Meech. And I was actually surprised. But then again, I was like, Pusha is kind of slick. Pusha, he knows how to talk his way into things. So I guess I wasn't necessarily surprised, but still it is kind of like, damn. I would like to thank everybody for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll really appreciate it. You all have a great rest of your day. Bye.